All right, well, we will get started. It is 10:02. I appreciate you guys joining this morning. And first and foremost, I appreciate you all volunteering to be chapter officers for this fiscal year. Whether you're a new officer or a returning officer, I appreciate the help, and I understand the challenges that the chapter has went through this past year. I know it wasn't easy, so if you are a returning officer, thank you. And I hope you find this presentation helpful and useful in running your chapter this year. This will be the first of two chapter training sessions that I'll be hosting this year. The first one today kind of just goes over the resources that we have at ASA for the chapters. And the second one will go into a little bit more detail about the successes of chapters, what makes a successful chapter, what are they doing, how are they marketing their events, and that training will be in October. So we will get started, and we should have some time at the end for questions. All right, so I wanted to start off with just some general ASA updates, what's going on at HQ. Our ProTech implementation, which is our association management software, which is going to power our new website. The ProTech implementation is going great. So with the new website that'll be going live in October, there's two big changes that'll impact the chapters and your businesses, hopefully. The first is the Find an Appraiser search function. I know we've had a lot of complaints about our current Find an Appraiser search function on our website. The challenge with it is how it displays your contact information, how easily people are able to find you and filter out the results. I know, when you look for someone on there, it kind of gives you a big batch of results. With the new Find an Appraiser function, it'll be more dialed in and specific, so it gives the user on the website the ability to find exactly what he's looking for, down to the location, zip code, discipline, and then even more specific than that once you're able to get your hands on it. Another big positive of this ProTech implementation is that the Find an Appraiser search function will be able to be integrated with your chapter websites. So I know on some of the chapter websites right now, you have your own list up there, similar to the Find an Appraiser search function, or you have it linked to the ASA website where they can come search on our site. With this, we'll be able to supply you with a link that you will be able to embed into your website. So it'll look like it's your own page, but all the results are being filtered through the ASA database. So it'll automatically be updated with new members that join, their disciplines, their business location, and all that information will be coming from ProTech straight to your website. So if you do have a chapter website, or you were thinking about creating a chapter website, now would be a great time to get that started, so that when ProTech does become live in October, you'll be able to integrate this with your website. The second positive of the ProTech implementation is the improved Chapter Resource Center. Currently, the Chapter Resource Center isn't the easiest to find and isn't the easiest to access any of the reports or documents. So we will be having a new Chapter Resource Center, which I am very happy about. Next, the new ASA office building. We are currently in the process of clearing out our current office and moving into our new office. And one of the main benefits of this move is we're downsizing in space, but we are gaining many conference rooms within our new building. So we'll be able to offer in-house education courses starting, I guess, in October once we move over there. And last but not least, the ASA 2021 International Conference is going to be in Las Vegas at Planet Hollywood, October 24th to 26th. I hope to see many of you there. All right, and let's start with chapter governance. I know some of this is basic, but for the new chapter officers here, I'd like to go over it. So the following are the requirements of all ASA chapters. Chapter officers are elected annually. Even if you are renewing your chapter officers for the same board for another year, you still need to have an election. And they need to be sent to me prior to June 30th of each year. So if you are here, good job, you already have that step done for the year. Chapters must offer a minimum of 4 chapter meetings per administrative year, unless your chapter bylaws say differently. Some chapters have agreed that they'll have at least 6, but 4 is normally the baseline for all chapters. Chapter officers must meet in person no less than 6 times per administrative year. These are just planning sessions throughout the year to get your chapter in order. And then the chapter treasurer must maintain the financial records and respond to requests from HQ for submission of the annual financial statements and other information for tax reporting within 30 days of notification. This year, we emailed the chapter treasurers, and this would be the 2020-2021 chapter treasurer and the current chapter presidents. We emailed you in late June about sending in your chapter financial information for this year, and we will need that sent back to us by August 13th. And there was a form attached to that email. If you need the form again, please let me know. I can send it over to you. Again, August 13th is very important that we get this in on time for our tax reporting to the IRS. All right, moving onwards. The responsibilities of each chapter officer. Obviously, the chapter president presides at all meetings. In the event that the chapter officer is unavailable to preside at a meeting, it'll be up to the chapter vice president. Other responsibilities of the chapter vice president is kind of a do-all position, support the treasurer, support the secretary, support the president, kind of just fill in the cracks where needed. The chapter treasurer maintains the proper financial records in response to requests about the annual financial statements. The chapter secretary maintains the minutes of all chapter meetings and board meetings and supplies that list to the chapter info or minutes to the chapter info@appraisers.org email. The chapter meeting minutes are not as important as the chapter board minutes. So if you're only going to send in one or the other, please send in your chapter board minutes. It helps me keep track of what's going on within the chapter, and if there's any way that I can assist you, normally I can spot something within the minutes. Next, secretaries are to keep the attendance records of every member who shows up to a chapter event and provide them with the proper form, either the CMA form or the chapter education form, to the members in attendance after every meeting and event, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then lastly, all chapters are responsible for maintaining the chapter's legal status and agree to abide by all applicable laws, statutes, and regulations. All that's saying is, make sure that you're following any local regulations in your jurisdiction, and make sure you do send in the chapter financial information by the 13th. That is very important so that you are able to keep your tax exempt status. All right, next, the Chapter Resource Center. So the Chapter Resource Center is a chapter's greatest asset. When I reviewed the success of some of our chapters in this past year, all of these chapters were great at accessing the Resource Center, using all of the resources that I've uploaded for them, viewing all the different reports that we have for them within the Chapter Resource Center. And some of these reports that they would utilize, obviously the chapter roster, but they would look at reports such as the chapter terminated list, which is members who either decided they didn't want to be a part of ASA anymore, which is fine, or members who simply forgot to pay their dues. So they would go through these lists, they would review them, they'd call the members who might have lapsed on their membership. There's so many other reports in there that they were taking advantage of, and that is why the Chapter Resource Center is the chapter's greatest asset. Again, located in the Chapter Resource Center, there's sheets on chapter marketing, chapter website guidelines, chapter meeting suggestions and ideas. There's different templates for taking minutes if you're a secretary, and there's much, much more. Also within the Chapter Resource Center is a Chapter Officer's Guide. This guide has best practices on meeting attendance, setting priorities, etc. There's government relations coordination, use of the ASA exhibit, public relations, ethics violations in the media, a whole bunch of information, and this is all within the Chapter Resource Center, and more specifically, the Chapter Officer's Guide. Continuing, so the Chapter Resource Center allows you to have 24/7 access to these reports. Again, the chapter reports, such as the roster and the termination list, you're not able to download directly off of it. But any of the other reports or templates within the Resource Center, you are able to download, and only the chapter officers have access to the Resource Center. Please make sure that you do have access to the Resource Center. I know if you are maybe like a chapter membership chair and your chapter didn't report to me that you are a chapter officer and you try to go in, you won't have access. So just double check if you are an officer or a director or any sort of board member on the chapter, that you do have access to the Resource Center. And if you don't, please let me know. Chapter communication. So every chapter is provided with an email distribution listserv that includes all the current members who have a valid email address listed with ASA. And also it includes only members who are active, meaning they paid their dues, they haven't lapsed on their membership. So if you ever find a member who says, oh, why didn't I receive an email? Well, it's likely because they might not be a valid member at the time, or the email goes to their junk folder or gets caught behind their spam filter at work. Email address for a chapter is going to be chapter, and then include the chapter number at list.appraisers.org. So for Washington, D.C., chapter 055 at list.appraisers.org. If you do not know your chapter number, shoot me an email and I will let you know what it is. Again, the list is updated hourly, and chapters are encouraged to use this frequently to let their members know about upcoming events, meetings, news from HQ. And again, if you do reply to any of the chapter listservs, or the chapter officers listserv or chapter presidents listserv, you reply directly to that email, it'll go to everyone within that list. So if you do ever receive an email from me through a listserv, please just forward that email back to me and reply that way. All right, chapter finances. So forms for reporting chapter income and expenses are sent annually. Again, we just sent that at the end of July. Forms are to be filled out after June 30th and should include all financial information through the end of the fiscal year. Chapters should not file a Form 990 or 990N through the IRS. This is what HQ will file on your behalf. Failure to provide the financial information, again, can jeopardize the chapter's nonprofit status. And most importantly, chapter rebates. So every year, ASA collects the dues from the chapter members and sends the dues back to the chapter. These rebates will be withheld if the chapter does not inform HQ of their elected officers or has not submitted the chapter required financial information. And the chapter rebates are issued twice a year, the first being in October and the second being in April. And here's a sample chapter agenda that I wanted to include for the start of this fiscal year. So being in July, I kind of wanted to give you guys a roadmap for your chapter if you're confused on how to lay out your year with the 6 board meetings and a minimum of 4 chapter meetings per year. So in July, I listed, the first chapter board meeting, attend the ASA hosted chapter officer training sessions, make sure that you transfer all of your chapter financial banking information, any documents from the old chapter board to the new chapter board if there are new positions in. And then just looking forward, August could be our first chapter meeting. The chapter financial reporting information is due. Second, in September, you could have the second chapter board meeting. And then going onwards, just flip-flop between 1 month having a chapter board meeting, next month having a chapter meeting. Obviously in November and December and early January, a lot of people are traveling. So a lot of chapters kind of have a break in their events through the holidays, and then they pick it back up either in late January or early February. But if this agenda helps you, great, that you don't have to follow it at all. But I thought it might be something helpful for some of the new chapter boards. Chapter education. So when you're planning a chapter event, it's important to get the word out to your chapter members. And if you want to market this event outside of your chapter, you might be looking for ways on how to do that since you don't have access to any of the listservs. So ASA encourages the local chapters to develop continuing education opportunities for their members and provides you with a quick and easy way to market your events using a chapter listserv, which I spoke on 2 slides ago. Should a chapter wish to promote an event beyond their chapter, you can always ask the region governor to promote the event. Region governors have full discretion on what to and when to send communications out to the region. Last year, you might have noticed towards the beginning of the year, you're receiving a lot of chapter events broadcasted through the listserv by the region governors. If you do ask the region governor this year, the kind of rule of thumb is they'll send out 1 email on the chapter's behalf, at least 2 weeks before the meeting. So if you do need them to send something out, feel free to shoot them an email, just give them proper time and make sure that the email doesn't have any big attachments or photos in it, since that normally gives our listserv some trouble. You may also contact me to advertise your event on the chapter bi-monthly newsletter. And any events that you send to me, in addition to being posted on the newsletter, will be posted on the local chapter events page as well. And again, please check the local chapter courses and the ASA events page before scheduling a conference or even a larger webinar to prevent overlapping on topics and dates with other chapters and HQ. For example, last year, there was a lot of webinars and conferences on crypto and Bitcoin. And when you would look at the calendar, there'd be the exact or a similar conference happening within like a 1 week or 2 week span, or even overlapping each other. So just be on top of kind of what other chapters are including in their conferences or larger webinars, especially if they're hosting it not just to their chapter, to all of ASA, just to prevent overlapping. And again, chapters should not create email lists outside of the ASA website or send bulk emails to members outside of their chapter. And this is simply just because all of the communications that go through the listserv are updated from our database. So if you have a list on the side that you've been using to email your members about events, you run the risk on not including maybe a member or two who just joined ASA, or a member or two who left the chapter and no longer wants to receive those emails anymore. All right, and let's talk about the chapter marketing program. So local chapter courses, we're able to promote chapter webinars, meetings, and events to all ASA members. Again, email me if you would like your event included on the local chapter events page. But we have two marketing programs that we are able to offer you. The first is the standard marketing program. This is completely free, and this is something that I will help with in our chapter, in our HQ marketing team. So within the free program, your class can be listed in the local chapter courses page on the ASA website. The class will be listed in ASA's Facebook events page, and the class will be listed in ASA's monthly local chapter education e-blast. And then say you have a larger webinar that you're really trying to promote and get as many people there as possible. We do have, I think it's called the premium marketing package. Here it's listed additional marketing activities. This is $75, and you can purchase this one time, and it lasts over the span of 2 months. So for these 2 months, this is what's included for the $75. One editorial listing for 2 months in the Associated Discipline ASA newsletter. So say it's a BV webinar or a conference, they'll be included in the BV Discipline newsletter for that 2-month span. For posting of the chapter provided content to ASA social media channels, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. One posting of a chapter provided article to ASA's blog and newsroom, and then a one-time posting of the chapter provided photos to ASA's Flickr page. Normally for the Flickr page, some chapters like to wait until the end of the event and post recap photos with a description to the Flickr page. Just if it's an annual conference, like to start promoting it for the following year. And if you are interested in the additional marketing activities, again, make sure you give us 2 months notice, and all the information is listed within the chapter education request form, and that's located within the resource center. All right, and chapter event credit. So there's normally much confusion surrounding which credits should a chapter member receive based on what event a chapter is hosting. And a simple rule of thumb is if the chapter event that you are hosting has some sort of educational component, a speaker talking on some appraisal topic that helps further the appraiser's education, that'll qualify for CE credit. If you're hosting a chapter networking event, or maybe you guys are just all going out to dinner with one another and just kind of networking there, all of those events will qualify for PA professional activities credit. So if you are hosting a special continuing education event, you may complete and submit the chapter education request form. This is located in the resource center to education@appraisers.org. Once we receive the form, we will review the information, all the details surrounding the event, and then advise you of the appropriate credits that would be granted for the event. And we will also give you a form that you will provide to every member in attendance. That's probably the easiest way for you and your members to receive the proper CE form at the conclusion of the event. And make sure that you do send in this chapter request form ahead of the event so that you have it prepared for when the event concludes. Also, to receive CE credit forms, you have a second option that does not go through HQ. In my opinion, it's a little bit more tedious of the two and maybe can lead to some confusion, but you can use the guidelines that are noted in the reaccreditation program booklet. And this is located on the ASA website and the My Reaccreditation portal to determine the appropriate credits to grant for the activities. And if you have any questions about how many credits based on the guidelines, you can email reaccreditation@appraisers.org. But basically within this booklet, it's about, I don't know, 20 to 30 pages long, has all sort of different events listed within it. And you can go look through the guidelines, see what event matches closely with the event you're hosting, mark down, oh, it says that'll give us 2 CE credits. The negative with doing it this way is that you might give them the wrong amount of credits if you get confused based on the guidelines. Also, you would have to create your own form versus if you just go through HQ from the beginning, we'll provide you with a form. So in my opinion, the first way is a little bit easier. You just have to wait for us to process the request form. The second way is faster, but it could lead to some confusion. And again, this is something that the chapter secretary normally will handle for the chapter. But since it is a very important aspect of your chapter events, everyone is showing up to get some sort of credit at the end of the day. It does fall on the chapter secretary, but this is really something that all the chapter officers should track closely. And just continuing, so if you're hosting, again, a chapter meeting, a networking event, you can utilize the chapter meeting attendance form, CMA form, which automatically grants 2 hours of PA credit and does not require pre-approval whatsoever from us at headquarters. So say I have a networking event at a restaurant scheduled for next week. Before the event, I'll go on the Resource Center, I'll download the CMA form, and then at the conclusion of the event, I'll sign the CMA form and send it to all the members in attendance, and you'll be all set. You'll need no pre-approval from HQ whatsoever. And ASA no longer processes CE or PA forms. So there's no need to submit these forms to us at HQ. Once you send the forms to your members in attendance, they will keep it in their personal files and reference it when they are applying online for their reaccreditation renewal. Continuing onwards, chapter awards. So every year ASA presents the annual chapter awards at the international conference. This year it's in October. Application should be submitted with supporting documentation to the chapter info@appraisers.org email or submitted through the link provided. Forms submissions recently closed for the 2020-2021 awards. So I won't touch on this for too long, but keep an eye out for the submission winners within the next month or so. Also, just talking on chapter awards, if you are a chapter who is a little confused on what it takes to host these great chapter meetings, if you review the chapter award submissions, which will be posted after the winners are announced, you can kind of get a great idea of what these chapters are doing successfully throughout the year, how many events they're hosting, what quality of speakers they have. So just reviewing the chapter awards every year really gives you a good idea on what it would take to have some of these award-winning webinars or conferences hosted throughout the year. All right, and then the last slide before I hop into some of the documents and programs that we have. So additional training, as I mentioned, will be occurring at the ASA International Conference on Saturday, October 23rd. I believe at 3 o'clock, I will be hosting a chapter leadership training session at the International Conference. If you are unable to attend this training in person, it will be virtual as well. So more details will follow on the virtual component at a later time. So this session, unlike the one today, which kind of just is going over the resources that we have to offer the chapters, this session will go into the new website and the Resource Center. So this is the new website that's powered by ProTech. So it'll show you how to access the new Resource Center, the new Find an Appraiser search function. We'll go through a whole demo on what we're able to do with the website and how it'll better help you and your chapter, how to effectively conduct chapter business, the success of chapters, different programs chapters have within their chapters that have been very successful for them over the past few years, how to attract high quality speakers, how to have better membership engagement and recruitment, and just generally best practices, tips, and more. It's going to be about a 2 to 3 hour training session. I think it'll be very, very helpful. So I hope to see many of you there in person. But again, if you are unable to attend in person, I will see you virtually. And for more information, visit the 2021 ASA International Conference page on our website. So that is it for the PowerPoint. But I wanted to share with you a few documents, and all of these documents are located within the Resource Center. So the first is, if you have never logged in to the Resource Center before, this is generally the process and what it would look like. So you sign in on the ASA website, you go to the top right of the website where you would have to log in. Once you log in, this is the page that will display. It'll say, welcome to ASA Central, your name will be here, some of your personal information will be here. In the middle of the page, it'll say My Resource Center, view resources for my current committees. Once you click on this link here, a new page will refresh. Towards the middle to bottom of the page, it'll say Reports and Documents. You'll select your committee. So in this example, it might say New Orleans chapter. So you'll click on the New Orleans chapter. Right underneath that, a new drop down will appear. It'll say, please choose a report. You'll click this drop down. There'll be about 50 to 60 different reports and documents. So right now, I think there's probably, 35 different tip sheets, programs, information, guides, all listed within the Resource Center. And then there's about 10 reports. Some examples of these reports are the chapter roster, chapter terminated members, new members who just joined, members who are candidates who are on the verge of becoming an accredited member or ASA, all these different reports that might help you either help grow your chapter or help the chapter members, grow within ASA. All right, moving onwards. So this is the incoming chapter officer checklist. So these are things to make sure that you touch on at the beginning of the fiscal year, especially when you're looking at a new chapter board that just transitioned from the old 2020-2021. If you're a new board this year, it's important that you take a look at this. So again, read the chapter officer guide, stay in contact or meet your region governor. This year, we have 3 new region governors. In Region 2, we have Sandy Tropper. In Region 4, we have Teresa Zeidler-Shanat. And in Region 5, we have Jeff Tarbell. So we are excited to have them on board. So if you haven't met your region governor already, feel free to shoot them an email. I'm sure they're excited to get to work with you. Meet with the old officers to discuss past problems, successes, any procedures, set goals for the chapter, outline a budget for the year, discuss lingering chapter projects. I know for some chapters, they were working on the chapter bylaws and chapter charter. Most chapters have that completed, but if you haven't completed it yet, I'm sure you'll be getting an email from me within the next couple of weeks just to wrap that project up. And arguably the most important checklist item here is to make sure that if you are a new chapter treasurer, that you have the bank account transferred into your name, and all the documents and financial information are also transferred with it. Moving onwards. So this is the chapter meeting ideas and suggestion sheet. I put this together early last week just to kind of give you an idea of some meeting ideas and suggestions that might help you get better chapter attendance. So just some general ideas that I've seen some chapters do that have been successful for them. Have a representative from your Chamber of Commerce present on the local economy is always a popular event idea. Have ASA's Government Relations Department present on a state or federal bill that impacts appraisers. If you go look on the advocacy section of our website and see a bill, or you just want to do a general overview on what might be going on in Congress that impacts appraisers, you can shoot myself or John Russell an email, and we'd be happy to present to the chapter. You can have Johnny White, the ASA CEO, provide updates on ASA and do a Q&A. He's always open and willing to come speak to any chapter. Have a representative from a local bank that processes appraisal reviews come speak to the chapter. Find a local professor from a university to speak on appraisers or the economy. Sponsor a new member night, ask new members to bring someone who might be interested in joining ASA out. Have a meet and greet at a local restaurant. You can always co-sponsor events with museums or local chapters of affiliated associations such as the Bar Association, financial planners, estate planners, etc. So some chapters have it worked out with a different organization in their area that they'll host an event and they'll invite us to it. Then we'll host an event and we'll invite them to it. And then you can always co-sponsor a USPAP course with other chapters in your region, kind of speaking on the idea of working with other organizations or associations in your area. Within the past few months, I've really been pushing chapters to work with chapters in their area, especially if they're struggling to plan events by themselves. So one example of that is down in Alabama, we have 2 chapters that are located very close to one another. And we also have an Atlanta chapter. So I recently held a meeting and they're discussing planning events together between the 3 chapters there. Obviously, it would still be virtual, but they're combining forces to A, draw bigger attendance, and B, hopefully get some high-level speakers since there are more members and it's 3 chapters together. So if you are a chapter that has been struggling, reach out to the chapter presidents in your state or in your area, and they might be interested in setting something up similar. And some suggestions to encourage chapter attendance. The email listserv is your greatest asset when trying to get the word out. Make sure that you are rotating locations and times of meeting around your general area. Send a survey out to your members and find out which days or times would be helpful. Last year, we observed the success of virtual chapter events. So one thing that I've been talking to some chapters about this year is hosting hybrid meetings. So I know everyone's itching to get back in person, but there are some chapter members who were previously, they never attended any chapter meetings. And this year they attended all the virtual meetings just for reasons either travel or it was just too tough based on their job to get to in-person meetings. So I've been talking to chapters about hosting hybrid meetings, and I have a whole sheet on how you would go about hosting a hybrid meeting in the Resource Center. But basically the idea is you would broadcast it on a phone or laptop if you have an in-person speaker. Another idea to encourage chapter attendance is use the chapter roster and call members who have not been active with the chapter for some time. Let them know about your next chapter meeting. In most cases, I'd say these are members who just haven't noticed or knew that these chapter events were occurring for whatever reason. Maybe their email is out of date and they no longer check it. So just by giving them a simple call, letting them know what their situation is. Of course, there's some members who just aren't interested at all in attending any chapter meetings or events, and that's fine. But just reaching out and seeing what their situation might be will be helpful. And if you have a chapter website, keeping your website up to date, sending personal invites for chapter meetings, and keeping it fresh and offering a unique experience or topic to your chapters. Oftentimes, especially this last year, there's a lot of similarity between conference speakers and webinar topics and different chapter events. The chapters that were unique and offered a new experience drew in big numbers, especially virtually. And again, all these sheets are located within the Chapter Resource Center in case you need to access them later. So this is a sheet on chapter marketing tips. I won't read through all of it, but it lists 6 tips here. This was put together by our marketing team that all successful chapters have in common when it comes to marketing: leadership, support, resources, partnership, mentorships, and communication. I'd argue the 2 biggest tips within the 6 are support, so appointing a designated person to handle the marketing and PR efforts. For example, a director of marketing, many times it's the secretary that puts the word out. But if you're a chapter that has a dedicated person who's going through all the social media channels, who's reaching out to me, making sure that the event gets posted on our website, gets included in the chapter bi-monthly newsletter, and gets included if you have premium marketing activities, etc. So appointing a person, the secretary already has a lot on their plate between making sure they have the right credit forms for these events, sending in the minutes, etc. So if you have just a board position of marketing, it could be helpful. And the other tip that I think is most powerful when it comes to marketing or successful is having partnerships with other ASA chapters. I can't speak on that enough. I think the second that you join forces with another ASA chapter, even if it's just for 1 or 2 events a year, you can kind of learn from one another. And I think it's very helpful, especially if you're a smaller to mid-sized chapter. And at the bottom, some other marketing ideas to consider: research and pursue potential industry partners. keep your website up to date, create a Facebook group for your chapter to post events and members to share posts that relate to appraisers, and create a marketing program within your chapter to get members involved. For example, set up a points system for posts shared, finding marketing / PR opportunities, etc., and maybe have a little prize at the end of the year. And this is the sheet that I mentioned a little bit ago on how to host a hybrid event. Again, so hybrid events are meetings in which attendees can participate both in person and virtually. Last year, virtual meetings were a great success, thanks to all the chapter officers who were flexible and found all these great speakers via Zoom. So it may seem daunting to host a hybrid event, but I promise you it is not that difficult. The two biggest components of it is having a laptop or a phone with good internet connection. So finding a venue, if you're doing it, say at a restaurant that has good Wi-Fi. So it might take a little bit more planning on your end to try to host a hybrid event. But once you do it once, I'm sure it'd be a great success, and you maybe be able to have an additional, 10 or so members from your chapter. But especially if you're trying to promote this event or webinar outside of your chapter to all of ASA, this might be a great way to draw in attendees from all over the US and potentially all over the world, depending on what time your meeting is. So I won't go through all of this, but if you read through it later and you have any questions about how feasible this is for your chapter, I'm quite versed in broadcasting and live streaming. So if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call later. And speaking on chapter websites and keeping them up to date, this is an info sheet on different guidelines on what you can and can't include on the chapter website. Again, I mentioned earlier, now is a great time to get your chapter website up to speed. If you haven't been using it, and if you don't have one, it might be a good time to create a chapter website. So here it has different things that you can include content-wise on your website. I always tell people, if you are looking for a great example of an ASA website that you kind of want to base your website off of, the Chicago chapter has a great website. They pretty much have everything that we ask them to have on their website and more content-wise. So if you're looking to create a new website or update yours, look at the Chicago website. Philadelphia also has a great website. I'm sure there's many, many more I just can't think of at this moment. And just some general ideas to what include on your websites: contact information for your current chapter officers, obviously upcoming events, ASA events, chapter meetings, news, copies of a chapter newsletter if you have them, information of interest to members of all disciplines. And then again, hopefully come October, we'll be able to provide you with the Find an Appraiser page that you'll be able to embed on your website. That should be very helpful for you. And last but not least, last year we started the chapter mentorship program. And the idea of this program is that in some chapters, they've had successful mentorship programs from members of ASA who have been here for a while, and they would pair them up with a new applicant or a candidate who's trying to get to that accreditation status. The idea here is it goes beyond that. And this is a relationship between a smaller chapter who signs up for this program, who might be struggling or has been inactive for a while and just really needs some direction, and they'd like to get that direction from a successful chapter. We will pair them with a chapter who has been very successful in whatever department they are looking for. So in most cases, chapters are looking for someone who can help them plan events, get members out to their events. So I'll go through the ASA roster list and I'll find you a good match, and I will get all of the chapter officers connected. And the idea is you'll just have, 2 or 3 meetings a year. And you'll also have an open line of communication whenever you need help. So if this is something that you might be interested in, either you are a struggling or inactive chapter who is looking to land on their feet this year and get the ball running now that COVID is slowly becoming behind us and we're getting back to in-person meetings and events. If this is something you're interested in, feel free to shoot me an email. And if you are a chapter who has been very successful this past year and are looking to help out one of the smaller chapters, also be sure to let me know. I'd be highly appreciative. So that concludes everything that I have to share today. If anyone has any questions, now would be a great time to ask. Just feel free to unmute your mic if you do have any questions.
Thanks, Justin. Are you able to send the presentation around?
Yes, I will. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just wanted to express my thanks, Justin. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Yep. All right, so hearing no questions, I appreciate you all being here. If you have any questions reviewing the PowerPoint or reviewing any of the documents within the Resource Center, or might be confused about what a report might be saying within the Chapter Resource Center, please feel free to give me a call anytime, shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. And I hope to see you all at the additional training at the conference in October.
Justin, this is Poonam. I have a quick question.
Yep.
The chapter president, Mike Cunningham, wanted to know where he can find the email lists. Did you tell us already, or?
I can send him an email with the Philadelphia chapter listserv.
Okay, if you can copy me also.
Oh, that'd be great.
Thank
All
you.
right, everyone have a great day.
Real quick, I wanted to ask a question about the mentoring program. Is this a new program or has it been ongoing for a while?
So it started last year and we had a handful of pairings. And I think it was pretty helpful. So if you're interested this year in either being, a chapter mentor or mentee, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for this presentation.
Yes, no problem.
Hi, Justin. It's Amanda McGee here. Do you know the length of the chapter meeting in Vegas?
Right now it's scheduled for that Saturday the 26th, which is technically the day before the conference starts. I think the opening reception is Sunday night. So it's the day before. And right now the training is slated for 3 hours max. From 3 to 6 Pacific time, Vegas time. It won't be any longer than 3 hours and it won't be any shorter than 2 hours.
Thank you. I know I've got Gina DeForio in our designation speaking that day, and I was trying to attend both.
Okay, great. Yeah, and for anyone here, if you aren't able to attend either virtually or in person, that will also be recorded.
Justin,
Yes.
would you please describe the mechanics of charging and collecting fees for chapter webinars?
So if you are hosting a chapter event locally, every chapter does a difference with how they collect the fees. Most of them just set up a PayPal and they pay through the PayPal. Beyond that, I'm not sure what the chapters do. Most of them do not charge for webinars or events unless it's a larger webinar or it's a conference. And in those cases, they always use PayPal.
Do I hear you saying that that is not under the purview of ASAHQ?
No, for chapter events, we don't collect any money. No.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, hearing no other questions.
Yeah, Justin, we have a chapter conference coming up September 23rd. So did I understand right that we could request ASA National to market it for the chapter at a charge of $75?
That's correct. Yep. If you go in the Resource Center, or actually in the email that I'll send you later or after this call about the chapter listserv, I'll send you that sheet and the request form in case you're interested in purchasing that.
Yes, if you can send that. Is it in addition to what you had already said you would do for the chapter? You said you would put it in the chapter events, but now you are saying that for $75, you will provide a lot more.
Additionally, yeah, I'll go in the chapter discipline newsletters for 2 months. and it'll be included on different ASA social media channels. So you get a little bit of extra marketing from us for that $75 over the 2 months.
That sounds good.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate you all being here. If you think of a question later, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call. But again, hopefully I see you all in October. All right.
Thank
Thanks so
you.
much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.